Why do you build me up, buttercup baby, just to let me down and mess me around? And then worst of all, you never call baby when you say you will. And it's probably because of your creative entrepreneur type, to be honest. That's probably what's at work there. This is Lisa from LisaRobbinYoung.com, back with session 4, day 1 of our 3-day growth planning workshop. I am super pumped that some of you have been with us the whole day. Way to stick with me and stick through the hard work. This is probably the toughest day of all 3 days because we're spending a lot of time in the uncomfortable space of working on you. If you've missed any of the sessions or you want to get the recordings to make sure you don't miss any of the sessions, there's a link in the description. You can click that link. It'll take you to the page. You can get the recordings. You can also get a copy of my new book, which is why we're doing this in the first place. Creative Freedom: How to Own Your Dreams Without Selling Your Soul, a guide for personal and financial success as a creative entrepreneur, is scheduled to be out at the end of November. And if you purchase the recordings, you will get an autographed copy signed by yours truly, sent directly to your door wherever you live in the world, as my way of saying thanks for participating in this workshop. And we are moving into the second pillar. Remember, I said there were 4 pillars of business model design. We talked in our last session about your context, right? That what is the framework? What are the constraints that you have to work with? Well, there's also this whole other piece that you're probably not aware of unless you've already taken the quiz to know your creative freedom entrepreneur type. And so we're going to spend this last session today digging into the creative entrepreneur spectrum. What are the different ninja skills and blind spots of each of these types of creatives and why that matters to you, and how to utilize that knowledge as you're building your business. Because what you will come to learn is that when you're playing to your strengths of your creative entrepreneur type, business feels a lot more effortless. Things move with more fluidity. Things feel easier even though you're still putting in the effort. But when you're resisting and fighting against your natural type, it becomes very difficult, painful, energy draining. For example, linears love the numbers and the structures and the systems and the processes. So when they can focus on that, they are in the zone, baby, and they are feeling really good. But sometimes they have to get out of that zone and they need to think big picture, how things are going to look and feel and the overall aesthetic, and that's not their wheelhouse and they get really frustrated. So when you know what your zone of genius is as it relates to your type, it's easier for you to stay in that zone and let go of the things that aren't in your zone of genius. So we're going to take the spectrum from one end to the other, and I'm going to talk about all 5 types. There are 3 primary types and then 2 cusp types that rest on the edges of the primary types. So we're going to go through all of that in this session. And then at the end, I'm going to encourage you, if you haven't already, to take the quiz. Kalita is here. Hello, lovely lady. I hope things are well for you in California. Thank you for joining me. This is really the impetus. The reason why I wrote this book in the first place was because I had accidentally stumbled across this spectrum. I call it the creative freedom entrepreneur spectrum, right? We go from one end of the spectrum to the other. This isn't about you fall here, here, or here. It is shades of gray, if you will. I've never met anybody who's completely chaotic. I've never met anybody who's completely linear. We fall somewhere on the range. Likewise, a true fusion probably wiggles a little to one side or the other at any given point in time. So what happened was, if you were watching one of the earlier episodes of these sessions, I talked about how I had stepped back from my business. Things were falling apart for me. Things were not working. And I was trying to get clarity on who are my right people? Who is my target market? Who is my right audience? Who am I really here to serve? And so what I did was I wrote down the name of every person I ever worked with, and I wrote down the tasks and functions that I did for that person. So I worked with a guy named Mark, and we worked on marketing strategy. And then we also worked on systems development, and we worked on email communications. And I wrote down every little thing that I did for everybody. I also wrote down what they originally came to me for. Because sometimes what they came to me for and what they ended up needing were not the same thing. One person came to me wanting help with building out his online coaching platform. What he really needed was someone to help create systems and structures so that he could stop being the bottleneck in his business. And that was one of the pieces that I helped him with that gave him the clarity to see, oh, there's something else I need to do here, right? So as I looked at all of these different tasks, it was like, everything is all over the map. But this does not help me. I had people who were young, people who were old, people of varying degrees of light and dark skin, people in one country, people in lots of different countries, people who spoke English, people who didn't, male, female, it didn't matter. They were all over the map. And I could not process who I was really supposed to serve. So I started moving these Post-it notes around, trying to find a pattern. What did they have in common? And as I started looking at the different types of tasks and the people to whom those tasks were assigned, things started to clear up. I recognized that certain types of people were coming to me for specific tasks that really weren't in their wheelhouse. And this other type of person was coming to me for a different set of tasks that also wasn't in their wheelhouse. So people were coming to me for the things that weren't in their wheelhouse that I could handle, but the variety of things that I could handle were very wide. And it was like, okay, I'm starting to get a hand. And so as I kept sorting, 70 piles became 30 piles, became 20 piles, became 5 piles, became 2 piles, and a handful of stragglers that didn't really fit anywhere, right? So I'm looking at these 2 piles of people going, these people are very chaotic, free-flowing, artsy, craftsy, creative types. And these people are very linear, very structured. Some of them are very rigid and traditional and relentless in their pursuit of a bottom line number or something like that. So I was seeing these 2 camps pretty equally. And I had the problem that as I looked at these 2 camps, I still had these stragglers who didn't really fit in either camp. And then as I looked at it, I didn't really fit in either camp. So this couldn't be the full picture. These people couldn't be this or that because then that wouldn't explain my stragglers. So something else had to appear. And so I stepped back and I looked at how I was sometimes in this camp and sometimes in this camp, depending on what was going on for me, depending on what my stress level was, depending on what I was facing in my personal life as well as in my professional life. And then I looked at my stragglers and I said, yeah, they have a similar situation going on. Very smart, they're capable of doing a lot of things, they take on too much, they do a lot of different things, they have a hard time picking one thing. I'm like, that's me. Like, I fit in the straggler category, so maybe I need to look at this differently. And so I started going back through my 2 piles and recognized, yeah, some of these people still strongly fit over here, but they're a little more closer to this group that can kind of do both. And some of these people still very strongly fit over here, but some of them kind of fit a little closer to this center section. And so that's how this spectrum developed of, okay, so I have these very chaotic creatives on one side and these very linear folks on the other, but are they completely different? And as I started looking at what these people did for work, what their business model was, what their marketing position was, how they positioned themselves in the marketplace, they were all creative entrepreneurs. That was like, oh, eyes wide open. They're all creative. They're just different types of creativity. So one of the first things I tell people, especially in interviews, is that we are all creative. Every single one of us on the planet, because we create, because we think about things and new ideas appear in our minds, we are creating new ideas. We are creators, therefore we are creative. Not every creative is an entrepreneur, and that's fine. But every entrepreneur is creative because we're all creative. And that's been the piece of education over the last couple of years that I've had to bring to the table for people to go, you know, you stand over here in your linearness And you go, well, I'm not creative. Really? You developed an entire business life cycle. You're a thought leader in your area of expertise. You're creative. Oh, I hadn't thought about that. And so it's the aspects of what your creativity is that allows you to see the creative gifts that you have. Like Kalita's a dancer and a dance instructor, and she lives and breathes movement. That's her creative juice in the world, okay? Helena's creative juice in the world is about love and relationships and carrying yourself in your femininity, right? So that's on the more chaotic side of the spectrum. Whereas I've had clients like Leslie Kuhn who developed predictable success and the predictable success business life cycle, which we're going to talk about in our next session, the first session tomorrow. And he's a thought leader and he's a very linear guy. It's processes and systems and order. I remember one of the first conversations I had with him as we were working on his project, he was telling me about how it works in the world of pilots, like airplane pilots. When one pilot is passing off control of the airplane to the co-pilot, he says, "You have control." And then the co-pilot says, "I have control," as confirmation. Like there's a system, there's a process, there's an order. And if you don't follow the order, you're not going to have control, right? So exploring that allowed me to recognize that we fall across the spectrum. And then there are these people like me, like Linda, who made it to another session. Man, you were staying up late tonight, girl. We're fusions and we live in the middle. So we can kind of go both ways and we can kind of, handle both sides. Sometimes we get frustrated with both sides. So let's take a deeper exploration of each of the types, and I'll talk about the cusp types as we go along as well, so that you can get a bigger vision of what are the strengths and blind spots that you might be running up against with your creative type. So let's take the chaotics, because those are the people who we typically ascribe the name creative to. These are your healers, your artists, your dancers, your actors, your painters, your visual artists, your performing artists. Think Lady Gaga, very much on the chaotic end of the spectrum. This has absolutely nothing to do with whether your house is in a state of order or disarray, whether your paperwork is all in one place or it's a disheveled mess all over it's not that kind of chaos. It's a non-linear approach to how your brain wiring works and how you approach the world. Chaotics can take in information from a variety of sources and process it kind of in the order that it comes in. Very stream of consciousness, okay? Not only that, their strength comes in interacting with people and experiences. They're very experience-based people. And as such, they have a very high level of excellence to which they aspire. I hesitate to say perfectionism, but if you're a chaotic, you probably know what I'm talking about. You want everything to look and feel and appear and have this certain level of excellence. And if it doesn't, you don't want the world to see it. You're either ashamed by it, embarrassed of it, or you don't think that it measures up, right? Kalita's like, oh, you're speaking the truth. Yes, yes. And it's not because they think that everything else isn't good, right? This isn't about judging the rest of the world. You can do what you want and that's great, but this is my vision, man. And don't screw with my vision. And they don't care if it's going to take them over budget, and they don't care if it's going to cost them a little bit more time, and they don't care about anything except achieving the vision. One of the problems with that, though, is that it makes it very difficult to bring on support to help you realize the vision for two reasons. One, because those people have ideas of their own. And a lot of times they might even have an idea that works better than what you're trying to achieve, but you can't hear it because you're fixed on this. That's my goal, man. That's the experience I want. I don't want to settle. And you see anything other than your vision of excellence as settling. And sometimes it is settling. And sometimes compromise has to happen or the vision can't be realized. And that's the growing edge for chaotic entrepreneurs. I like to say they've got champagne wishes and they've got Kool-Aid money. right? I want to have Marie Forleo's website and I've got $12. What can you do for me? You know, I'm sorry, that's not going to happen. And you've got to own that, right? That's the blessing and the curse, the double-edged sword of being a chaotic. One of the stories that I love to tell isn't my story. I'm recounting Lady Gaga's story. When Lady Gaga was trying to get Arthur Fogel to sign her or to work with her, he's like the biggest concert promoter in the world. Like everybody wants to work with this guy, right? What she did was she put on her own tour and she took every penny she had. She drained her savings and she put everything into this show just to get his attention. She wanted to create the most powerful experience that she could to attract this guy's attention and get him to go, yeah, I will work with you. Her whole life savings, she put it all on the line because she believed in her vision that much. And she knew that if he would say yes, it was going to be worth it. Did she consider what would happen if he said no? Maybe, maybe not. But that's what chaotics do. They're like, this is the vision and I'm going for it. I'm putting everything I've got into it. And I don't care how much it costs and I don't care what risk I have to take. I'm willing to take the risk because the vision is the thing that's important. On the other side of that spectrum is the linear. And the linear is, again, all about systems and processes and order and operational orders and making sure that things actually get accomplished. So the example that I use on that end is Warren Buffett and Berkshire Hathaway, which sells for little over $250,000 per share. Okay, this is a very highly valued company because he's been relentless in, this is the bottom line, this is what we need to hit, this is the number, this is the target, this is the goal. Now, do you hear how they're both very goal driven? This is about the experience. This is about the metric. I want it to look and feel and have its being this way, says the chaotic. Linear says, we've got to hit this deadline. We've got to meet these numbers. I don't care what shortcuts we have to take. I don't care what we have to change. I don't care this is what we have to drive toward, or it's not going to make any money. I don't care if it makes money. It's got to make money. Do you see the difference? And so fusion creatives sit in the middle going, I want it to be perfect and I want it under budget. And I want it yesterday. And it's never going to happen. So for as much perfectionism as chaotics deal with, fusion creatives have it like 10 times over. Why? Because we're in the middle. Because we stand here with our ability to do and process lots of things. And so we compare ourselves to the people who have it more together on the linear side and people who are more creative on the chaotic side. She's a better dancer than I will ever be. She's a better actress than I will ever be. Well, he's got more money and he makes money faster. And so we sit here and we judge ourselves in our state of not enoughness, not realizing that that is our double-edged sword of real strength. Because we can do different things, we can communicate, we can bridge the gap. We can sit here and go, okay, chaotic, I really get that you want to have 75,000 flowers on this stage because it's going to make it look so amazing. I hear that. I do. And I see that vision for you. And I really want that for you. And I hear you, Mr. Linear, saying, hey, we only have $25,000. And if we're going to get the whole project done, we have to be willing to negotiate on the number of flowers. We've got to hit that goal. So can we do 60,000 flowers instead and still make it look beautiful and still achieve the overall vision of what you want and still make Mr. Linear happy by staying within budget? Can we find a compromise? The fusion creative can do that. A linear doesn't know how to speak that language. A linear goes, we have a budget, you've got to meet it. I don't care what you do, but you've got to meet the budget. And the chaotic's like, I don't give a crap about your budget. Screw your budget. This is what we want. There's going to be a constant battle. Constant battle. You're going to hate each other. You're going to love to hate each other. It's going to become part of the business dynamic, and it can really thwart your progress. It can be very challenging. Now, How do you know where you fall on the spectrum? Because I see somebody going, I think I might be a fusion. It has to do with two factors. One, what your preference is. And two, how you handle things when things get stressful. So let me give you an example. I had a woman that I interviewed for the book. Her name is Regina. All her life, she wanted to be a Latin dancer. Latin dance was like her thing. She wanted to go out in the world and dance. And she lived in she was born and raised in a tiny little like one stoplight town in Germany. Like this town was so small, there were no dance classes. She took physical fitness classes, gym classes in school as a means of toning up herself. She took foreign language classes in school as a means of preparing herself to get out of this little town so that she could then maybe at some point pursue a career as a dancer, okay? But over the course of her working career, she was put in roles. She took a job as a translator. She started traveling the world, doing translatory things, and then got promoted into a position where she was creating cross-functional teams and creating systems so that these people who spoke different languages could communicate with each other. Her job got very linear. So she got very good at the linear stuff. Now, you will see me say this many times, and it's written all over the book. Just because you're good at something doesn't mean you're supposed to be doing it. It doesn't mean that that's how you're wired. Okay? You can get really good. I'm really good at filing. I hate it. It drains my energy. It does not bring me joy in the least. Even, people are like, well, when you get it done, you'll have that sense of accomplishment. I'm like, no, I have a sense of that's 12 hours of my life that I had to waste filing. It's done, but I'm going to have to file again, right? That's my energy because that aspect of the linear work really pulls me down. I'm good at it. I know my ABCs. I've been practicing them for 40 plus years, right? So your proficiency does not dictate your type. Your preference does. So back to Regina. Regina got into this job and she was very good at it, but she would come home emotionally drained and really tired. And she wanted to do something that was going to take her out of that funk. And so she signed up for a Latin dance class. I think this is the story. I'm trying to remember it off the top of my head. So she signed up for this Latin dance class. She goes in this class and she's just loving the free-flowing nature. There's no steps. You just dance with a partner and the partner moves you across the floor and you just kind of follow and you go with the flow. And she's like, it feels so great. I feel so alive. This is so wonderful. It's so easy for me. I don't have to learn choreography and steps, which is structure, processes, linear order, right? I don't have to learn all of that stuff. I can just relax and let him move me around the floor and I can just go with the flow. Go with the flow, a very chaotic response to the world, okay? So what's your preference versus what's your proficiency? Not about what you're good at, because sometimes that thing that you need to be doing isn't easy for you. Sometimes it's a real challenge, but it's a challenge that you like. It's a challenge that you enjoy. It fires you up, right? So that's going to be indicative of where you fall on the spectrum. The other piece is, what do you do when the chips are down? When things get hard, what's your default mode of operation? For example, Mike Michalowicz, he's the author of the book Profit First, Pumpkin Plan, Surge, Toilet Paper Entrepreneur. He and I are friends, and I interviewed him for the book, and when he took the quiz, he discovered that he was a linear cusp type. And I'll talk about the cusps in a minute. But what determined the factor for him was when things get hard, his mind goes to, what's the order, what's the process, how do I solve the problem? Instead of, if you're a chaotic type, how am I feeling? How do I shift the way I'm feeling? What's the energy around this? What's my block? Where am I stuck? It's more of an internal processing versus an external problem solving. So if you have a default that goes one way or the other pretty consistently, that's going to give you an idea of where you fall on the spectrum. Now, if you're a fusion creative, you're going to go either way pretty easily. In some instances, I'm going to be like solve the problem, because I can clearly see that that's what I need to do. On the other side, there are going to be times when it's like, I can't see the problem. Let me feel into it. Let me experience in my body where the block is and see if I can work through it that way. And you don't have a preference one way or the other. You just fall into whatever's going to work naturally for you. So if that's going to work naturally for you in this situation, you're going to do that. If it's going to work for you in this situation, you're going to do that. And fusion creatives both equally like and equally detest both sides of the spectrum. That is the number one determining factor for fusion creativeness. Is, do you have an affinity, or are you just kind of like, I could go either way, it really doesn't matter, it depends on my mood, it depends on the day. If you find yourself in that space regularly, you're probably a fusion creative. So hopefully that explains that. Oh, Sarah's here. Hi, Sarah. Greetings to Michigan. Hope all is well up there and it's not too cold for you guys right now. Kalita says, I'm chaotic by nature, and I know how important it is to develop processes I can rely on to support my chaotic self. Yes, exactly. So for chaotics, you need structure. And a lot of times, structure is a resistance piece for you. It's like, I know I need it, but oh my God, it feels like I'm living in a prison and I will not be oppressed, right? I don't want to have that. Linda says, I don't do repetitive and boring that well. Exactly. That's very much a chaotic tendency that fusions can embody because, again, we live on both sides of the spectrum. We have 1 foot here and 1 foot here. And, you know, depending on the weather, depending on what the task is, we want the thing that's going to keep us alive. Boring and repetitive, which is very much a linear construct, does not fill us up. So our chaotic goes, more of that, really? But if we stay in that chaotic energy for too long, we start hearing our linear voice going, okay, really, you need to rein it in because you're falling apart. We need to get structure. We need to get back on track, because if we don't, it's all going to go to hell in a handbasket, right? So your chaotic energy needs the frameworks, the systems. Again, like I was talking about in our last session, the jungle gym, you know, that dome-shaped metal bar construct that's on the playground, that's just enough structure, just enough form, just enough rigidity to give you plenty of space to be creative and free. You can hang from it, you can climb on it, you can make stuff out, you can use your imagination and conjure all kinds of scenarios with it. But if it was made out of wet spaghetti noodles, the whole thing would fall in on itself and you'd have nothing that you could work with. So you need just enough structure, enough that keeps you moving and keeps you focused, but not so much that you feel like you're trapped in a prison. So one of the things that I recommend for chaotics is to try things on a 30-day basis. You know, if you want to go with no work on Saturdays and I really need to give myself more structured work time, I'm going to go with no work on Saturdays. I'm going to try it for 30 days because chances are good the world will not fall apart in 30 days. And if halfway through it, you're like, this is really not working, you can reevaluate. And you've only got 2 weeks left to go. But this gives you permission to try structure on without feeling like it's all or nothing. I have to do it or I'm going to fail. That won't work for you. That'll actually frustrate you. On the other side, with linears who are very systems and processes, they will over-systematize. They will try to systematize everything if they can, because that's how they relate to the world. Numbers are easy. They don't lie. They're the same all the time. They don't change. A 4 is a 4 is a 4 is a 4. It will always be. But people, they have moods. People, they say one thing, they do something else. People are hard to read. People make me uncomfortable. A lot of times, linears can be very successful very quickly because they just stay focused on the goal and they stay relentless on, I must execute, I must deliver, I must hit that number. But the minute their business gets big enough that they need to take into account other people, things get challenging for them. Gabriella's here. Hello, lovely. I hope all is well for you. So when you are that person and you've been so systems and structures focused, you have to recognize somebody's got to run that system. Somebody's going to be served by that system, we can hope. Somebody might have a problem with that system. And how do we deal with that? What if the system breaks? What if the system's only good for this level of business and we've just elevated to this level of business and that system doesn't work anymore? When that happens, linears go, I can't, you mean I got to talk to people? I got to figure this out. Client interviews? I can't do that. Like, I can't ask people questions because what if I misinterpret what they're saying, or what if I say the wrong thing? And so the human element, linears can be machines sometimes, right? And that's a big complaint. Well, they're just so focused on the bottom line. They just don't care about people. It's not that they don't care about people. They don't know how to relate to it. They don't know how to see that bigger picture and how all the pieces fit together. They just know that if I push this button, I get this result. So let's just keep pushing that button. So if you're a linear, you do need to step back and you do need to look at, how do the people fit into this? I know that I want to sell this widget. What's the marketing message that's going to resonate with the audience? I have to think about audience resonance. I can't just put a price tag on it and go, well, of course you're going to buy it because it's amazing. No, I have to explain it. I have to tell the story. I have to woo the audience and get them to see what I see. That's not in their wheelhouse. But they still need that. They still need to learn those tools of communication. They still need to learn how the rest of the world interacts with them and their offer or their great work, right? And so fusions, we stand in the middle and we see all of this and we go, I see all of that. And I'm never going to be good enough, and it's never going to be perfect, and I'm just not going to ship it all. Forget it. I'm just not going to put it out into the world. Or I'm going to put it out into the world and not tell anybody. If you build it, they will come. Yeah, wrong answer. Let's tackle that right now. If you build it, they will come is such a misnomer, because if you've seen Field of Dreams, he never says, if you build it, they will come. The voice says, if you build it, he will come. He, one dude, one person, Shoeless Joe is going to come if you build this field. One person will not fill your business. One person will not keep you in business. Now, what happened was Joe went back beyond the corn and told some other players, and then they came and played a game of ball, and then word got out, and people started coming. So one person told other people. That's marketing. Word got out, right? But the promise was, if you build it and don't tell anybody, one person will show up. But if you build it and let people know about it, then people are going to come. Then people are going to come. So Joe was the evangelist for this ball team. Like, Joe was that first follower who was like, all right, guys, come check this out. You need that person, and you need to not count on that one person. You need to do the marketing work, okay? So especially if you're a fusion, it's really easy to sit and go, I'm not going to ship, or I'm going to put it out there and, oh my gosh, nobody bought it. I guess nobody wanted it. I guess I'll move on to the next thing. And that is a huge problem for fusions. I'm a fusion, so I will tell my own horror story, okay? I've been online in one form or another for over 20 years. The last 10 years or so, I've been a coach and trainer working with solopreneurs and small business owners. And in the last few years, specifically creative entrepreneurs. I'm a fusion creative. I went on my website just to see what I had to offer, because I was doing an offer inventory. I have over 100 different things that people could buy scattered across my website. 100. So if I wanted to and had the marketing plan set up to do this, I could market something different every week for 2 years and never have to create anything new, okay? That's a fusion creative. We get bored. Oh, we did that, checked it off, what's next? And that's the linear piece of us that's going, there's another thing to conquest, there's another achievement to have, there's another bottom line to hit, there's another goal over here. But then the perfectionist chaotic in us goes, but I want it to be awesome, and it's not awesome, so I'm going to ditch that and move on to the next thing. Instead of, it's as awesome as it can be right now, and I'm going to share it in its current state of awesomeness with the understanding that the next time it's going to be even more awesomer. Even more. And I'm going to continue to show up consistently presenting this offer and see what happens. Again, 30-day commitment to give it a try and see what happens. I know that Linda did this. Linda spent 30 days marketing one piece of her vast array of gorgeous art. One piece for 30 days, which the linear in her was like, great, we've got a system and a process and we'll just keep showing up. And the chaotic in her is like, oh my God, this is so boring. It's the same piece every day. It's a different way to talk about the same piece. Oh my God, and my eyeballs are gonna die. And yet, at the end of 30 days, she had some traction. What was boring to her, her audience was just starting to become aware of. There's an old marketing axiom that it takes 15 touches for people. And if they haven't heard it in the first few 2-3 times, you have to do your 15. And then awareness has hit a saturation point where people are like, okay, I'm aware that it's there now, and maybe I'm interested in buying it. But if you're just getting traction and you mention it once or twice, that's like saying, well, I'm trying to build my business on Twitter. I posted 2 tweets yesterday and I haven't sold a thing. Because you haven't gotten awareness, let alone interest, desire, right? So consistency is one of those pieces that needs to happen. For chaotics, it's really easy to be consistent with experience delivery because it comes naturally to you. It's not as easy to stay consistent with systems and processes. Likewise, for linears, it's really easy to stay consistent with systems and processes. It's like brushing your teeth. But it's not so easy to step back and look at the human element and figure out how this works for people, real people who are really going to consume what you're doing. And then fusions in the middle, we arm wrestle with either or both of those things, depending on where we're at in our business life cycle and what we're trying to accomplish in the moment. Now, the cusp types have an interesting time because they still demonstrate primarily the behaviors, characteristics, and traits of their primary type. So if you're a linear cusp, like Mike Michalowicz, he's really problem-solving, action, result-oriented, driven by numbers, processes, and systems. But he's also going to demonstrate a lot of very outgoing, go with the flow types of energy, particularly when he's around other people. He relates to people better than a straight linear would. But when the chips are down, he's still going to lean on his problem-solving linear abilities to move the ball down the field. On the other side of the spectrum, if you're a chaotic cusp, you still tend to do much better with people and experiences and situations where you can go with the flow and be very adaptable, but you can see the need for and understand systems and processes and maybe even implement them on your own and stay fairly consistent with them, right? So you could fall anywhere on this spectrum, anywhere. And as I said before, I've never met anybody who's specifically one type or the other. There's a range, right? I don't know why that is. I still need to do more research to uncover why that is. So maybe in a future edition of the book, I speculate that part of that is because we're raised in a culture that appreciates well-roundedness, because we have affinities as children. My sons, when they were little, they would make parking lots out of cars. They would build out of bricks and blocks, and they were very mechanically inclined in order and process. And you know, math and science were easy constructs for them. Numbers and order, yes. And as they got older and they allowed themselves to explore their creativity more, that unfolded for them, that unpacked for them. And then wherever they were rewarded or penalized as children and growing young adults, that shaped the story that they told themselves about what they were good at and what they could do and where they got their joy and where they didn't, right? So this is a theory I have. I have no evidence of this yet because 2 kids does not a research study make, right? But I do find that when interviewing the people that I've interviewed for the book, what I found is these creatives tend to go back to where they got joy as a child. In Regina's case, she went back to dance. And she said, I love not having to worry about choreography. I love not having to learn steps and processes and orders. I love to just be able to go with the flow. That's how it was for me when I was a kid. So there's something in our childhood that builds that story for us and gets it started. My ex-husband, very linear, but he has some very creative streaks in him. He does some things that are very creative, right? but he's very linear, and he was raised in a very staunchly math and science oriented home. Did that shape him? Possibly. So the research is still out on that, but regardless of where the research is, those are the findings for people, is that we fall on this spectrum somewhere. And when you get clear on where you fall, you get to see, these are the things that I really shine at, and I can do more of that, and keep in mind that it can also be a double-edged sword. So let's not push it too far over the edge. Let's take it just to where it needs to, and then remember to incorporate the other elements that help make the business healthy, that help make me healthy, so that I'm not staying stuck in the story in my head. So those are the creative entrepreneur types. If you have questions about that, please pop them in the comment section. That's what I'm here for. This is our last session of the evening. Tomorrow, we will start with the other two pillars of business model development. That's the life cycle and the business model. Now, I will say, how do you have business model development and then have business model in the business model development? We'll talk about that tomorrow. But if you haven't already, go find out what your creative entrepreneur type is by taking the quiz at my website. It is totally free. You can go right to the homepage and click the thing that says take the quiz, or you can go to lisarobinyoung.com/quiz, and that'll jump you right into the quiz, and you can start taking it right away. It's free, there's no opt-in required, and you're gonna get a basic breakdown of, these are your strengths, these are your blind spots, this is what to look out for. There's also a report that you can opt in for to give you more details. That's up to you. But having that construct, understanding that context, because that's what today has been about, understanding all of you and how you show up and how you operate in the world, right? That's going to inform how you set up your business, how you present your offers, what kind of offers are even going to work for you. And tomorrow, when we start going into the actual design of finding raving fans and building out your business and understanding the types of growth plans and where you fall on the spectrum of business development, okay, you're going to need this I Matter foundation first. That's what today has been about. So if you haven't already taken the quiz, please make sure you do that. It will be a very helpful and informative piece for you as we move into tomorrow. I'm not showing any questions in the queue today, so we're going to wrap up. If anything does come up, feel free to post the questions or send them to me privately. I am glad to answer them. That's what we're here for. We are back here again tomorrow, 11 a.m. Central Time. Be there or be square. We will be talking about business life cycle, and you kind of need to know where you're at so that you can know how to grow. Until then, this is Lisa Robbin Young signing off. In blessings and peace. Have a great night.